What's up, church? It's been a long time. Been gone 4 Sundays, and I knew it was time to come back because I was worried about all of you. Didn't want you to miss me too much. And I have a new headset. Can you hear me well? Okay. Before I begin, I want to share a joyous moment I had yesterday that I just shared with the Chandlers that just made me, one, emotional, but extremely proud of everything we're doing in the life of the church. Not that there hasn't been a moment that I haven't been proud, but this, what happened yesterday when I picked up the youth at camp was really special because I never had youth call me their pastor before. And so what happened was one of the young women from the Wednesday gatherings, and that's our Wednesday Spanish service we have here at church, came running down the hill, yelling my name, Jorge, Jorge. And right next to her was Jacob Chandler. And she looks at him and says, "That's my pastor." And he says, "That's my pastor too." And it wasn't until Friday that they realized they both go to the same church and that they have the same pastor. And she said to him, "We're from the same church." And I said, "Yes, you are. You are from the same church, even though it took you a whole week to figure that out." And this is a young Guatemalan woman and a young, white man from this church that was just special because that's what we're trying to do. To combine cultures and communities and remind each other that we are one and that we're there for one another. So I just had to really share that with you before I talk about Jesus, even though that was a Jesus moment. Amen. Amen. All right. I'm like, get excited with me because that was an exciting moment for us. And I could tell there are countless stories about that week with the youth and just everything that has happened since we started this new service about over a year ago. But okay. Jesus. So I want to start by saying that there are a lot of different reasons why people go to church. Some go because it's something that they have always done. They grew up going to church. Some because they feel like they should. Some because they have been guilted into going. Some go to church because they love God, and some because they fear God. And some because they want to know God, and some to just give God one more shot to be real. And some go to church looking to be part of a community. And I'm sure that is the case for many of us here, right? We are all here for many different reasons, looking for different things, coming with different experiences with church. The man in the passage most likely didn't go to church, well, in this case, the temple. He had this thing, you see. This thing that he carried around with him that made him less than normal, less than acceptable to the community, especially the faith community. This thing, this affliction the man carried with him, the text calls a withered hand. Because of his withered hand, he was labeled unclean. And the religious rules and laws said that because he had this thing, he was unable to associate with the people at the temple. You see, back in the day, if you had an affliction that made you unclean, it was known that it was most likely the result of your own sin or the sin of your parents' sin. So in other words, it was your fault. And anyone unfortunate enough to touch one of these unclean folks would have to go through major priestly purification rituals and a lengthy separation from the community. And there will be burning of incense and chanting of prayers, and honestly, who needs that when it is just so much easier to keep the unclean out of the temple altogether, right? This way, normal people could go about their lives and not have to deal with possibly getting infected or affected by those who were unclean. Now, if you were the one who had a withered hand or some other affliction, you did have another option. You could try to hide it. For instance, you could just keep the hand inside your coat or your shirt sleeve or tunic or whatever. You had the option not to show people what you suffered from. And possibly no one would find out, and you could sit in the temple and interact with folks. But like any of us who carry around something, we have to constantly live with, but then have to hide. If we are successful at hiding it, it becomes exhausting, doesn't it? And frankly, easier just to stay away. Then there's the whole shame factor. For example, when I used to tell people, I don't anymore, but I used to let people know, well, you brought this to yourself. You made bad choices. You are just weak-willed, and you're a sinner. And there's also self-deprecation. Some people feel, I brought this on myself. I made bad choices. I'm a sinner. Anyone familiar with those statements? And if you get good enough at that, you don't want to do anything at all. So what I imagine is that the man with the withered hand most likely didn't come to the temple on his own. Most likely he was set up. A plant paid off by the religious leaders. This is in my imagination, by the way. To attend worship that day as part of a plan to trap Jesus into doing something against the rules. If they could catch him breaking the law, they could call Jesus a fake. And they know that Jesus can't help being a do-good healer, always doing the right thing. He helps anybody, no matter what the consequences. So this would be the perfect setup, right? After all, no authentic prophet would do anything against the religious laws, including healing on the Sabbath. We don't know why the man with the withered hand agreed to be a part of it. Maybe he needed the money. Again, this is in my imagination. Maybe he was angry at the people who had cast him out so long and wanted payback. Or maybe he had one grain of hope that Jesus could in fact heal him. Sometimes we don't know the reason why we end up in a place where we thought we would never be. Like me at this church many times. I mean, it's true. This morning I wake up, wait, I'm preaching? What am I doing there? How am I at this place? But there we are, in whatever place it is we find ourselves sometimes, wondering how we got there. So everyone goes into the temple, and Jesus is there, and the withered hand guy is there, and the religious people are there, and worship begins, and everyone is in a stare down to see who is going to blink first. And just as the Pharisees thought he would, Jesus blinks. And he stands up in the middle of the aisle and calls out across the room to the man with the withered hand, "Hey, you, come here." And the man begins to get up, but he suddenly feels stuck. His heart speeds up and his mouth goes dry, and his withered hand slides deeper into the pocket of his coat. And he thinks, oh my God, he knows. Why did I agree to do this? Why did I come here? And Jesus calls again, "Please come." And from somewhere inside, he finds the strength to get up. And even though the room begins to spin, he begins to make his way towards Jesus. But halfway down the aisle, he feels the eyes of judgment staring at him, and he stops himself. And Jesus begins to speak again, not to him this time, but to the people of the temple. Tell me, which suits the Sabbath best? Doing good or doing evil? Helping people or leaving them helpless? And no one said a word. So Jesus begins looking people in the eye around the room, one after another. He is furious with them, right? He's angry. But at the same time, I believe and what I feel is he is brokenhearted at what he sees. This was not how it was supposed to be, right? This was not how God intended the law to be interpreted. Instead of keeping the law as a guide and using them to learn the ways of love and compassion, the people have made them into tools of power and oppression. And we still see that today, right? Using them to manipulate and exclude. They had twisted and misused God's law to the point that it was as withered and misshapen as the man's hand. And I believe it cuts Jesus to the core. The room stays frozen. Another stare down. Jesus blinks again. And he walks toward the man with the withered hand, stone still and now weeping in the aisle. He can't look up at Jesus. He is so filled with guilt and shame that he just stands there, hand still tucked in his pocket. And Jesus now, face to face, toe to toe, and focused solely on him, whispers, "Stretch out your hand." In other words, for me, show me your hand. And slowly the man draws the withered hand from his pocket and holds it up to the light coming from Jesus' face. And this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you how the story turns out, to tell you that the man was healed, to tell you he never had to worry about his hand again. Wouldn't it be great if life were like that? Wouldn't it be wonderful if being healed meant that we would have no more struggle, no more battle, that we could just put all our faith in God and we then would have a carefree, stress-free, addiction-free, or whatever it is you have going on in your life that you may be ashamed of and are hiding from others. That would be wonderful, right? But I'm not sure that this is what we are supposed to learn from this passage this morning. I'm not so sure that the healing moment that day in the temple had anything to do with the man's hand getting better. The healing moment for me, instead, was when Jesus asked him to hold out his hand, and he did it. The healing happened the minute he knew that Jesus was inviting and welcoming him into the light of his love. And the man said, yes. Reminds me of something that happened Thursday evening. So many of you remember Todd Whitley, right? Maybe you don't. He used to work here with us. He just graduated from the Pacific School of Religion, and now he's back there working as their communications person. I'm not sure exactly the details of his job, but he's supposed to spread the word out about PSR. So he emails me because I guess, I don't know if it's once a year or twice a year, they have a catalog or an article or a magazine that goes out to alumni, and they like to feature alumni and the work that they're doing. So he wants to feature me in the magazine. And I hesitated. I didn't say yes right away because I'm just weird that way. I don't like that kind of attention being in a magazine. But I agreed to the interview under one condition, that he talks, because he wanted to interview me about the Wednesday gatherings, about this new service we have happening at CCSM and the community that is gathering around there and how they are gathering. And he knows it has been growing. So I said, you have to speak with the people. If this article could mostly have the voice of the people, I will do it. So he agreed, and he came here Thursday. 5 individuals from the Wednesday gathering showed up to be interviewed by him. And Natalia and Stephanie were there. And Todd asked him a question. He asked him, well, he started by saying, I have a lot of friends who are transgender, who don't want to go to church, who believe they don't belong in church, who believe they will not be welcomed at church. What would you tell them? And Natalia, short and sweet, said, come to Iglesia San Mateo, Unidos en Cristo. With so much pride, because I found healing here. I, too, never wanted to step into church. I always felt that as a trans woman, if I did step into church, I would just be looked at and judged, and I never wanted to experience that shame of who I am. And that went in to be about a 5-minute conversation. Then there was another young man there who made it clear to Todd, because then Todd asked the question, so really what brings you to the gatherings? You know, how do you find healing? Because he obviously heard from Stephanie and Natalia that they have found healing by being part of the Wednesday gatherings. He said, it is great to know that I could be at church and take pride that I am an immigrant. And take pride and not be ashamed that I am undocumented. And that I feel safe, that I will not be judged. And that I could be truly who I am as Pastor Jorge says every week. Amen. I mean, I was in tears because, well, one, as you know, I never wanted to pastor a church, and I never wanted to start a church, and I never wanted to do what I'm doing right now, and yet I'm seeing these Jesus moments. You see, I believe that for the most part, we all possess a withered hand. Something in our life that we carry around with us that need healing. For Stephanie and Natalia, they found healing and finding church again in their lives. Finding out that being part of a faith community where they don't have to be ashamed of who they are. Some of us have deeper pockets than others, so we're able to hide them better. But we all have them, right? We are not alone in this. The people in the temple that day who were so intent on setting Jesus up, and the ones that were just there for the show, and the ones who were there out of responsibility, or there out of guilt or fear, or even the ones there to give God one more shot, all of them, all of us have hands tucked in our pockets. And it can wear on us to the point where we feel stuck in life, where we feel we can't make a difference in this world, or where we feel that that's just too much to carry. I'd rather not be part of anything. I know for me, I have been in a place where I can feel so bad about myself and my own inability to beat the problem or overcome or be free of it, that even when I felt that I could hear God calling me, God saying to me, please come, I have stopped myself halfway there. And maybe some of us stand there with the room spinning around in shame, thinking, I can't go one more step. I can't go back one more time. I've been down this road so many times before, only to fail over and over. And for that moment, the silence is deafening, and then everything freezes, right? And then Jesus blinks. Show me your hand. And from somewhere inside us, we gather the strength to lift whatever we are carrying and bring it into the light of his face. From somewhere inside us, we find the strength to say yes one more time, to let the one who knows every part of us into the most hidden parts of our lives. And let me tell you what we get in return. Love from the one who doesn't berate. Hope from the one who doesn't punish. Even after all the times maybe some of us have messed up. New life from the one who sees you, not as a failure, but as holy and a blessing to this world. You get to know a God who loves you unconditionally. A God who sees us as valuable and precious. So when is the last time you thought of yourself as valuable and precious? Think about that. Yet that is exactly how God sees all of us, and who calls you even now as he stands in our midst. Show me your hand. Amen.